Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. This is your weekend racing preview focusing on Ascot and the Victoria Cup, and also looking as well at Lingfield, where we've got a couple of Oaks and Derby trials as well. I'm delighted to be joined by just one guest, I should say, today, but it is, of course, the man himself, Andy Holding. Andy, great to have you here. How's your week been at Chester so far?
I'm not that much of an interest regards betting, George. I put up one yesterday too, which ran really well, finished second, so I was pleased to get one in the frame, as it were. Day before, again, very quiet. I've had more of an interest as we speak on the day when recording here on Friday. Quite like the Chester Cup and some other races at Catchy Eye as well. But it's a bit of a silly season at the moment. As you see, there's 7 or 8 meetings today, including the Irish stuff, and there's 9 tomorrow. So trawling through it and then coming up with the absolute best selections at the prices is becoming increasingly a difficulty, an ongoing difficulty. But we'll do our best.
Well, we all appreciate it. I've set a reminder for this time next year, or 2 weeks ago. Next year, don't bet at Chester and don't bet at Punchestown. I think that's going to be my means of.
All you got to do is follow Willie Mullins. You don't have to not bet at Punchestown.
Well, follow Willie and see me follow Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien at Chester this week.
That's it. Yeah. Note to self.
Anyway, let's get into the racing itself. We're going to go through the card at Ascot and then have a look at those 3 races, the 2 trials, and also the listed race at Lingfield as well. Before we do, just going to point you in the direction of the Oddschecker app. Please download it now for the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and Andy's tips, as well as our other tipsters as well, straight to the app every morning before racing too. The first race, the 145, is the Royal Ascot Local Schools Art Competition Handicap. I hope the winner of that art competition it does well out of it. But Flying Solo is a 6-1 favourite for the race itself. Mascat 8-1, Screaming Petrus 8-1. Juan de Montalban 10-1 with Protected Guest, and Just Hubert 11-1. Boss Power and HMS President 12-1. Andy for the opener.
Yeah, first and foremost, a weakish looking favourite here to start off with. Flying Solo from the David Marnussier stable. That yard just hasn't really caught fire yet. I think they had a winner a fortnight ago, but they've gone really quiet again. I think he's at something like 17 days without a winner and nothing in the frame in the last fortnight. So I'd want to take him on his seasonal reappearance. There's a couple that catch the eye here. Juan de Montalban from the Kevin Philippot de Foy stable ran in that very good race at Thursday the day behind a horse called Get Shirty. I napped a horse called Forza Auto out of that race of the day at Hamilton. Very rare bet for me in Hamilton. It must have been a good thing if I would have stick something up there, that Scottish track. But I think that's this time last week when we did the Guineas podcast, I mentioned Contact, the David Barron horse who went on to win at Newmarket over a mile and a half. He was second to the aforementioned Get Shorty. Time figure was very good, and back in fourth was Juan de Montalban, who, to my eyes anyway, looking at him, the way he sort of faded in the last 50 yards, just blew up and looked as though he needed the run. He was bang there at the furlong pole, still looked a danger, but he just had a proper heave and didn't quite get home as well as the others. Obviously, that run bound to have sharpened him up mentally, physically. And that was his first run for New Connections. I must have been absolutely delighted with that. He had 3 runs prior to that with David O'Mara. Going back further in his career, he was victorious for Andrew Baldwin a couple of times. He likes good ground, so the soft ground at Thirst would have probably counted against him. Looking at the Ascot forecast, I think we're in for a bit of a dry day. Hopefully the galloping track will suit him fine, should do, mile and a half. And he's drawn 4 as well, which is, relatively okay. So he's the number 1 choice ahead of HMS President from the Johnson Horton yard. This horse, again, comes out of a good race on the time figures at Musselburgh first time. Maybe on Enemy, who should have won the Cigaro Stakes at Ascot next time. A whole host of horses have come out and run well out of that race subsequently. And again, another one that needed the run. Of his first run for 161 days. He went well in it until just faded in the last furlong. And then if you go back and look at his form here last year, you'll notice that he finished second on Shergar Cup Day behind Graphite in a well-run contest. So he does like Ascot. Ascot form is clearly something that I always look into. So he's definitely got that box ticked. So yeah, there's every sense to put these 2 up each way. I think one's 9-1 or in and around the 9-1 mark. The other one's 11-12 to 1. Firm's bound to be betting 5 places, etc. I think if you back either one of those two each way, we won't be too far away.
Juan de Montalban, 10-1 best price. That's with Bet365, but short as 7-1 elsewhere. And HMS President is 12-1 with Paddy's, Betfair Sportsbook and BetVictor, Boyles and Betfred as well. So if you shop around for your prices using Oddschecker, you can get 10s and 12s there on Andy's 2 selections. Most of those firms paying 5 places. Hills, though, paying 6, as are Sky Bet. So do keep an eye out on those place terms as well. Second race on the card is the 220, the Buckhound Stakes, a listed race, and Aasy is the 7-4 favourite ahead of Third Realm at 7-2, alongside Stowell, who's also 7-2, 11-1 bar the rest, with Universal Order, Mandube, Nail Quickly, Something Else, and then 150-1 shot, propping up the field, and 2 Odd Pals. How do you see this one going?
A lot depends on what kind of shape Aasy's in. He's just become a little bit of a frustrating character of late. Prior to that, he's been very consistent. Looked as though he's going to go right to the very top. But the last 2 runs last season just kind of have checked the momentum and just sort of left you with a little bit of a sour taste in the mouth. He looked as though he was going to win at Newbury quite comfortably. He didn't quite get home. They dropped him back in trip to run on Champions Day, and that ended up being a bit of a disaster. Obviously, the rain came, and that blunted his speed, his turn of foot that he's got. On his days, we know he's very, very good, as we saw early on last season when he won at Newbury. He looked, like I say, as though he was going to go to the very top. And then that run in the Coronation Cup beyond Pile Driver solidified that view. But like I said, he's just gone backwards a little bit since then. Whether I'd want to take a short price is having to question. The positive is that he does go well fresh, and if the rain does keep away, then conditions are going to be in his favour. Of course, he missed Chester this week because of the rain. So he's probably the right favourite on his quality and overall form. But like I say, I'd probably, with the dead 8 runners, look to back something each way. Third Realm style, obviously 2 4-year-olds, stroke 3-year-olds from last season who ran in, some good quality races are the obvious 2 to concentrate on. Third Realm ran really well in the Derby, finished 5th behind Nadir and several other good runs, including beating Nadir, of course, in the Lingfield Derby trial. Stand him out as probably the main danger. I think if he was each way territory, which I don't think he quite is, he would probably fit that criteria. And the other one is Mandube. He's had a wind operation since last year, but I do like him. He's a real strong stayer. I think he's going to make him into a nice middle distance horse this year. Whether 1.5 miles might be a little on the short side is open to question. But he's run here at Ascot, which is something that I quite like. And he's got form tied in with Yabir as well when he finished second to him on the July course last season. So he's not a million miles off these. He's definitely Brian Mean's best horse in his yard. And at 10-1, or you might tell me he's slightly bigger than that, 12-1. If they're all eight runners go to post, I think he's probably the value. Interesting runner here is Jim Goldie's horse, 2 Old Pals. I mean, Jim Goldie lost leave of his senses. I mean, first time out, sending it all the way down to Ascot in a listed race up against Group 1 horses. Put it this way, he must think that horse is very, very good to do that. Otherwise, he's going to be left with egg on his face. I mean, he wouldn't want to see something completely tailed off first time out.
And runs half well. What kind of handicap marks are you going to get as well?
Well, it's just absolutely bizarre. That was the first horse I looked at. I thought, what on earth is going on there? You'd expect that to run like in a Hamilton maiden and be a 6-7-1 shot in a against a couple of Southern Raiders. I've no idea what's that doing in the race. But anyway, that's just a little something for the viewers to have a look at. But Al-Aasy is the right favourite, but Mandube is the value at 12s.
Maybe it's James Manslong, the owner's dream to have a runner at Ascot on any day, and they've just sent him down there for that. Well, 8 runners. I mean, you have to assume that the plan is for Goldie's horse to run, but it might be worth just waiting until the date about Mandube there, in case one does come out with dead 8 runners as it stands. Obviously, if one comes out now, you just get the quarter, the 2 places. The third race on the card is a maiden, and there are no prices as of yet, but a couple of interesting runners. Only 2 of them have run before Dayan and Redemption Time, and a couple of powerful connections, as you'd expect in a meeting like this as well, with Godolphin coming here with 2. Any here that catch your eye? Can you shed some light on those that have got a bit of form coming into the race?
Well, a lot of these have come from sort of breeze ups, and you have to take on trust what they've done in those breezes, particularly a few. I think at recent breeze ups. I think Wallbank was the second quickest breezer at the Newmarket Craven sale not so long ago, and it's quite significant for me anyway that Ammo Racing decided to break the bank and get him. I think he cost the right few quid as well. I know he was definitely six figures in the realms of sort of 4 or even 500 grand or something like that. I mean, he's by Kodiak. No Lippy, if you remember No Lippy, she was a real precocious filly trained by Mark Johnson, who won I think the first 3 races in her career. So very much pumping a lot of precocity into his pedigree, and of course, being a fast breezer, and Ammo Racing want to hit the ground running with their 2-year-olds prior to Ascot. That one is likely to come in for some significant support. Obviously, I haven't seen the market yet, but I imagine he'll be close to favourite. Redemption Time sets the standard, having run well first time out.
Do you think he will be favourite? Just given, I mean, I know that Ammo have obviously pumping a lot of money into racing, but given the connections of the other horses, and you've got a kind of David Loughnane trained horse, do you think there's any chance he kind of flies under the radar despite the money spent?
I doubt it, because bookmakers nowadays have their cards marked with these kind of horses.
Yeah.
I mean, they could probably put him in tentatively, let's say 2-1, 5-2, and behind maybe Redemption Time or even the Godolphin horse, who's got a good page.
Yeah.
They're very difficult races to price up. Going to Noble Star, he's by Kingman, out of a horse that always used to make me laugh just because of its name, Eartha Kitt. I don't know if you remember Eartha Kitt.
Yeah.
She was a very useful horse when trained by Tom Dascombe, and I think was sort of listed or Group 3 level. So I think that's her first dabble into the breeding barns. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes. So very, very fascinating race for lots of reasons. But yeah, definitely based on the vibes and what I've been told about that Wallbank. A good friend of mine went to the breeze ups and saw this Wallbank in the flesh, and said he was very good.
Interesting. Wallbank there, the one to side with maybe in the maiden. Not on many betting podcasts, racing previews will you get tips for unraced 2-year-olds, but that is where Andy comes in to his own. Hopefully we'll break the stopwatch on the third race at Ascot on Saturday. The 3:30 now is the Fillies Handicap, and Strawberri is the 4-1 favourite, with Delta Bay at 6-1 alongside Spirit of the Bay at 6-1 as well. Stunning Beauty 7-1, Rising Star 15-2 alongside Aurea, Soft Whisper 10-1, 12-1 Serenading, and Don't Tell Claire 14-1. Yeah,
I think of all the races we're going to touch on this podcast, this is the least appealing from my perspective. We've got loads of these still in the unknown category. Several of them either haven't had a run this season, or they have been, for instance, in Maidan, such as Soft Whisper and Stunning Beauty. And we've got a lot of form away from Ascot as well. None of these, other than Don't Tell Claire, have got strong course and distance form. So all in all, a complete and utter dilemma of a race. Just because it's run well here before and the yard's in good form, I'd probably have a little bit of a dart at Don't Tell Claire. When she won here back in September, I thought she was quite impressive that day. The clock certainly suggested that when she beat State Occasion and several other fillies in a very competitive race. And she ran quite well in listed company subsequently, rounding off her season by finishing just behind the likes of Memora and several other good horses. Again, the yard, as I said, was in good shape. They had a win at Chester without gate yesterday. So putting all the strands together, then this one probably makes the most sense, being as it's got at least several positives in its direction. But as I said, you can make cases out for some of the others. I definitely won't be sticking anything up in this race anyway.
Let's move on then, on to the 4:05, and this is the Tote Victoria Cup. 28 runners as it stands at the moment. Dark Shift is just about the 8-1 favourite ahead of Fresh, although Fresh is a sea of blue on Oddschecker at 9-1. Varfatino is 12-1 alongside One Ruler, and Chief of Chiefs the same price as well. Magical Morning 14-1. Aratus 16-1, Accidental Agent 16-1, the Turpinator 16s, Path of Thunder also 16s, Dance Fever 18-1, 20-1 bar these. Not the easiest race to solve, Andy. Any views here?
Well, the first thing to say is you need to pay close attention to the draw at Ascot on Friday as we speak. because we've got two straight track races. One of them a fairly sizable field, the other one not quite so sizable, but where they race on the track, where the jockeys go, I think might have some kind of bearing to how the Victoria Cup is likely to pan out. Probably about 4 or 5 races a year is there as many runners on the straight track here at Ascot, where the draw bias will be fairly pronounced. Looking at the sort of record over the years, River Nymph won it last year, drawn stall 24. Then we go Cape Bar and 10, Rip Off 13, Fastnet Tempest 18, Flash Far 29, Speculative Bid 24, Cable's had 25, Excellent Guest 13. So straight away, you know the pattern is you want to be on a double figure draw. So they tend to sort of race middle to near side. So with that in mind, you certainly have to factor in the gamble Fresh, who ticks a lot of boxes, doesn't he? He's a track specialist. He looks as though he's been laid out for the race by James Fanshawe. And the way he ran on his comeback race of the day after a 163-day break certainly, you know, sort of lit your eyes up, didn't he? The fact that he was last turning for home. He made belated lay headway, knocked about, and then he got beat a short head. The Racing Post comments were eye catcher. So you know they were basically just giving you a bit of a nudge, wink towards future targets. And as I said, this looks ideal for him. He goes a little bit of cut in the ground. I think ideally he's better just with a little bit of ease rather than soft or genuinely heavy. 7 furlongs. I think he's probably going to be his trip, although he has got solid form over 6. He ran well in last year's Stewards Cup, not Stewards Cup, the Wokingham. So everything about Fresh, draw, track form, he's had a recent run and an eye-catching one at that, points you in the direction of him with regards a good solid run. So I think he's the number 1 starting point. Because of the draw, I'd probably go against Dark Shift, unless today's race in Ascot tells you otherwise, because he's drawn stall 4. The other 1 or 2 I'd like to mention, Chief of Chiefs, he's another one comes into the argument. He ran behind Fresh at in that same race at Kempton, so he's had a run and he runs the track really well. But he is a 9-year-old now, so his best days behind him. The One Ruler is definitely worth a mention. Now, Godolphin have definitely targeted or are beginning to take these handicaps at Ascot a little bit more seriously. If you remember Real World winning the Hunt Cup, I think it was either last year, wasn't it? And landing a bit of a gamble, 40s into 18s. So they don't mind running their listed stroke group horses in these handicaps. And One Ruler, I mean, he's got an amazing body of work. If you look at some of the horses he's been running against in the last year, he's obviously been overtried or run over the wrong trip. They ran him over 1.5 miles last year in the Derby. He was never, ever going to get the trip. They also ran him against Mahafeth in the Hampton Court Stakes, over 1.25 miles. Again, he didn't get the trip. But he only got beat 5 lengths by the mighty Baid over at Newmarket last year when they dropped him back to 1 mile. And he was a massive eye catcher last time out at Maidan behind Stabber Companion Real World when he ran on to finish 3rd from a long way back, finishing ahead of Path of Thunder. He turned the form around with him on his previous run. I think he's going to run a hell of a race because I do think a strong run 7 furlongs in a big field will really suit him. And he's drawn 19 towards a standside rail. The 12-1 for a group horse, a genuine group horse as well, against this kind of field, is definitely worth considering. And I'll just mention Vafortino as well, a horse that used to be trained by Joseph O'Brien, now with Kevin Philippart Defoy. He ran a really nice race on his comeback the other day, just got beat by the old Bless Him in a very strongly run race at Newcastle. The 3rd has won since, and he's another one to throw into the mix. But I don't want to be mentioning too many names because I'll be here forever. I would say whittling it down, given the draw, Fresh is definitely got to be top of the pile. But One Ruler, I think, is very much the class act of the race, and he should go well.
Fresh 9-1 best price with Bet365. One Ruler 12-1 with plenty of firms. Although Sky Bet do go 8 places, but 365 is 7, which is the best place to go for Fresh. But Sky Bet 8 places and 11-1 for One Ruler, which could be the way to play it. The penultimate race on the card is another Fillies handicap. Not many prices here. One firm is out though, William Hill. After the rain, they've got 7-4, Trigoni 11-4, Moon Island 7-2, Twisted Reality 8-1, Creamer and Glacier 9-1, and Karma 11-1.
Yeah, after the rain, he's obviously going to be very popular. Winner of his last 2 starts, including last time out at Windsor. Harry Davies is very much the go-to pilot for many stables nowadays, but more predominantly Godolphin, who've used him to good effect. Running here for Marcus 71 with his £7 claim taken into account. Clearly, she's going to be very difficult to beat, but I do think Trigoni is going to be a serious danger to the favourite, based on her run the other day at Windsor. When she was involved in a very strong race, our time figures that we've got suggest that Windsor race was well above average. It was won by Andrew Lloyd Webber horse, Dialectable You, I think it was. But the numbers for that race suggest that, like I said, it was a really good race for a Class 4 race. And Trigoni was absolutely desperate and lucky not to win it. Was racing behind the favourite up the stand side rail, but the gaps just didn't appear at all in the last furlong or so. And she literally finished hard on the bridle, almost not known as that she'd had a run at all. She runs it off the same mark. She's in the same form. And, she should be going very, very close to winning a race like this. Obviously, this is different. It's on the round track, and she's stuck on the outside in a field of 6. So obviously, Adam Kirby's got to try and get a bit of cover. But providing he does, she slots in quite nicely and settles early on. Given what I saw the other day of her, she's going to be very, very dangerous to the favourite. So Trigoni for me at the prices.
Trigoni is 11-4 there for Adam Kirby, and Clive Cox, the one to take on the favourite with in the penultimate race, Ascot. And on to the last, another handicap. Again, just hills out, World of Windhover, 9-2 favourite with Mamilius, 11-2, Big Bard, and Under the Twilight, 9-1. Mr. Bluebird, Mount Mogan, Strike All, 11-1, 12-1 bar those.
Yeah, I mean, this race really, in all truthfulness, almost doesn't belong on a Ascot Saturday card. A lot of, for want of a better word, midweek gaff horses are running this. Look, fair play to connections of all these horses. You get a chance to have a winner at Ascot. I think it's a massive incentive. But I've got absolutely zero opinion in this. The only one I would sort of semi-mention, just because I thought it ran well here last week, behind Celsius, was Phoenix Star, a horse who did win last season at Sandown in a very fast time and has run some big figures in defeat since. But I thought that was quite an encouraging run. Was run up at Newcastle the time before. Again, doing all its best work the other day here at Ascot over 5. It looked as though for me wanted 6. Just didn't have the pace of the winner. And to be fair, that was quite a good Class 4 race. Celsius took a nosedive into Class 4 company for the first time for a little while. So, yeah, for podcast purposes and putting something up that at least has run well in a similar handicap recently at the track, then Phoenix Star is one to have maybe a semi-interesting, but that is definitely a race I'm not even going to be bothering looking at from a tipping perspective anyway.
Can't say he made a great case for it, but Phoenix Star there, 14-1. The one that maybe just, if you're really looking for something, you need Andy's insight, then that's the one to go for. 3 more races that we're going to cover here. We'll all at Lingfield. We'll start with the Derby trial, but before we do, Andy, a lot has changed in the last couple of weeks with regards to trials. We've obviously seen the Guineas as well. Where do you see both the Derby and the Oaks market at this stage?
Yeah, a little bit cloudy, if I'm being honest. I must admit, I thought New London was going to be my Derby horse had he pulled through his trial with flying colours, but that project has definitely been shelved. I thought he might have gone to the Dante Act. I thought that track might have suited him better, and as it turned out, running him at Chester, even though they were trying to learn something, didn't really go in his favour. He just looked all at sea round there, and the second favourite, Changing the Guard, just bossed him completely. I think it was a really good ride by Ryan Moore. And if you're looking for a solid each-way Derby bet at the moment, I think he probably stands out as being one of the most obvious ones, doesn't he? Clocked a good time, looked very strong throughout the race. He's very uncomplicated. You can ride him from the front. You can ride him just handy. He just looks unruffled and unflustered type, doesn't he? Changing the Guard. He's a really likeable type, and he'll still fly under the radar because obviously Stabber Companion Luxembourg will catch all the headlines, but we don't know whether he's stay a mile and a half for certain. So we're learning all the way. We've still got the Dante, we've still got the Derby trial, which we're going to talk about. one of the 2 trials here, there and everywhere, one at Goodwood, maybe a couple of French ones along the way. So there's still a long way to go, nearly a month away now to the Derby, and a lot can happen between now and then. I haven't really fallen down on anything in particular as yet, particularly as I don't know all the data yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're changing of the guard 10-1 best price at the moment compared to Luxembourg, who's now 2-1 favourite for the Derby. So that just goes to show exactly what you're saying in terms of Luxembourg maybe dominating the headlines. We'll look at the Derby trial now, the 240 on Saturday at Lingfield, and Walk of Stars is even money. I was told a kind of stat this week, and I mean, someone else can maybe verify it, that Godolphin have never won a Derby trial or an Oaks trial, which, if that's true, given their dominance at kind of this level, well, not dominance, but their strength, it is surprising. We obviously saw New London being turned over as well. United Nations, though, is 9-2, Natural World 5-1, Zechariah 8-1, Lionel 10-1 in this 5-runner Derby trial.
Yeah, I mean, this is a funny betting race, really, in every sense. I mean, this is a really, really short one, isn't it? Walk of Stars, who had a good reputation going into his newbie race. He was only up against 2 runners, and in the end, he was workmanlike rather than spectacular. The one thing we can say positively about that run at the Berkshire track was the time figure was very healthy, because his stabber companion made the run in and made it a good test. And he, from looking like as though he was going to win 2 or 3 lengths comfortably, he had to end up being shaken up quite vigorously to only win by a neck. So full credit to his stabber companion who forced him all the way. But is that run or form good enough? The other thing to mention as well is he hung left as well that day. He kept leaning in towards the rail, and Buick was trying to drag him off his stabber companion. So coming down the hill here at Lingfield and sort of hanging down the camber into the rail for such a big horse as well, I don't, like I say, I don't really want to be putting him up or backing him at even money. Away from him, the rest a decent bunch. United Nations ran well in the Epsom Derby trial the other day. I think he'll come forward like a lot of our Aidan O'Brien's horses. I've looked at Star of India.
Yeah.
And he beat one horse home in the Craven, and then he went on to win very impressively yesterday. Talking of the Craven, and this brings me on nice little link there to Zechariah from the Martin Mead stable. Yeah, good segue, lovely segue. I thought his Cresta ran really well against Star of India yesterday at Chester. Didn't get the clearest of runs through, but that was encouraging. But Zechariah, you look at him in the Craven, he got badly outpaced, having raced prominently, and then he ran on again once he met the rising ground. He ran, to me, like at least 1.5 miles horse, or certainly 1.25 miles at the least. And he did all of a mile to win as a 2-year-old. He's by Nathaniel. And that time figure for that Craven race actually makes him come out really well here. He comes out second top of our figures behind Walk of Stars, and yet he's available to back at 8-1. So I think he would be the route I'd be going down. Just like I say, just based on the pricing, I think the favourite's vulnerable, especially now you've handed me that stat as well.
Zach, it's one of those stats that surely is just inevitably going to come to an end pretty soon. Anyway, Zechariah,
as soon as you mention it, it'll probably come to
exactly,
an end.
exactly. Especially with an even money shot on a 5-1 shot in a 5-runner race.
Yeah.
Zechariah is 8-1 best price, with a couple of firms, 365 Hills, Bet Victor among them. Into the Oaks trial now. Emily Dickinson for Aidan O'Brien and Ryan Moore is a 15-8 favourite ahead of Belt Buckle for the John Gosden team, 4-1. Rogue Millennium 13-2. Mystic Wells for trainer at the moment, and 1,000 Guineas winner George Bowie is 8-1. Speak 10-1, 14-1 bar. 9 runners at the moment here, Andy.
And again, another similar race to the Derby trial. Very lopsided regards betting. We got a bit of a shock in this race last year, didn't we? I think 28-1 shot won it. And it smacks of perhaps that line is striking twice again. I mean, Emily Dickinson is a nice filly. I've seen her run both times. She was eye-catching first time out. The podcast I do for my site, I mentioned her as a horse to keep on the right side of when she did win last time out at Naas, but she was just workmanlike rather than spectacular. Her time figure was just okay. You're very much betting on reputation here. You're betting the Aidan O'Brien, Ryan Moore axis. If you didn't know anything about time figures and opposition, what they run against, you'd be mad to take 6-4. I think there's a couple of interesting runners in this race. I actually do think Mystic Wells could have a chance to squeak here because she's won at Brighton, so she handles the camber. She went at an amazing gallop for the grade the other day. I know it was only a handicap, but she really served it up from the front and stuck her neck out as well when in franchise. The horse had been in good form. Came at her in the last furlong, saw her off, massive distance back to her previous winner in third, who'd won at Windsor the time before. I think she's going to outrun her odds. I don't think this is the strongest of listed races, and George Boy's obviously noticed that as well. Hence chucking a horse in who you wouldn't normally expect a Brighton win to come here and win a Derby, an Oaks trial, but because of the weakness of the race, I don't think he's barking at the wrong tree completely there. And the other one to mention is Rogue Millennium. We'll get a chance to see that form line of Rogue Millenniums as we speak on Friday because the horse that chased it home. Exciting news. I think he's down to run at Ascot in the afternoon. So exciting news from the Michael Bell stable does win or run well 24 hours or earlier. The form of that Weatherby win of Rogue Millennium will be obviously advertised.
Yeah.
Time figure wise, nothing wrong with the numbers. Much better than Emily Dickinson. And more predominantly, this horse has got lots of scope as well. If you look at her, she's a real big, strong, robust mare with a touch of class. So I'd probably play the two against the field here, George. Mystic Wells and Rogue Millennium.
Mystic Wells and Rogue Millennium there for two up-and-coming trainers in Tom Clover and George Bowie. 13-2. Well, I mean, I guess once you've won a Guineas, you're no longer up-and-coming. You've already arrived. For George Bowie, 8-1. Mystic Wells is there. Be amazing for him to have an Oaks hope that isn't his Guineas winner as well. Now on to the 350, the final race we're going to be covering here, which is the listed Chartwell Fillies Stakes, and She Do is the 3-1 favourite ahead of Chakoya at 4-1. Wren's Breath 6-1 with Symphony Perfect the same price. Pearl Glory 8-1. Thunder Beauty 8-1. 20-1 Lola Showgirl and 20-1 Rosemary in Time.
Yeah, again, sometimes these listed races or group races for fillies, that you can basically throw the ratings out the window. Anything can win these races. I think fitness sometimes can give you an angle. The draw can give you an angle rather than actual sort of the supposed quality of certain horses. The one I quite like here is Lola Showgirl at the prices. I mean, she's what, 18, 20-1?
20-1, yeah.
20-1. I mean, obviously, the Lockdown Camper in good form. She's a Royal Ascot winner. She beat Stabber Companion Fion quite comfortably, I thought, in the end back in June. And her form subsequently has been pretty good. She was fourth in a listed race of the day behind a horse called Roman Mist, but that was a race that was chock full of good fillies. Roman Mist had got previous form at Kempton, so it was no great surprise to see her win. But Potapova was second, who's highly regarded from the start team. Maestra, again, is a up-and-coming filly trained by William Haggis, who was well fancied on the day. And I thought Lola Showgirl, who served it up from the front, ran about as well as could be expected against that mob. She's much better than an 86 rated horse, so again, I think her ratings are misleading here with regards to price. And I think this track will really suit her. She's a horse that can attack with, so jumping on the rail from stall 3 might see her easily outrun her odds. So I'd be prepared to have a bit of a dart here at 1 and Lola Showgirl 20-1 will do for me.
Lola Showgirl there at 20-1. The final tip from Andy on this Saturday racing preview at Ascot and at Lingfield as well. Thank you very much to Andy for sharing his time and his thoughts with us today. Hopefully a couple of winners in there. Definitely some value. No doubt about that at all. To get the value, do download the Oddschecker app. You can get the very best prices, free bets, bookie offers, place terms, and Andy's tips straight to the app every morning of racing. Do subscribe to the Oddschecker podcast on any platform as well, and to the YouTube channel too, to find these previews and plenty more content as well. Thanks to Andy. Thanks to you for taking the time to watch or listen to this. Have a great weekend. And as is always the case, please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.